Good morning, class, and welcome to week 3 of Intro to Cultural Anthropology. I'm Faye, and ordinarily in this class you've been getting one of these videos every week, but since I've been deep in the very rural woods doing research for the first 2 weeks of our class, I didn't have enough available bandwidth to upload videos. So this is the first one, but you'll get one every week from now until we finish class together. In these videos, I like to recap a little bit of what we talked about last week and give you some helpful hints for what's coming up in the upcoming week. So that's what we're going to do today. It's Monday, the end of instructional week 2. Tomorrow starts week 3, which means today is the last day to turn in your assignment 2. And I want to remind you, as you think about that while it is possible to turn in that assignment late, you're going to lose 10 points. There's a really big thunderstorm going on behind me, so sorry about that. You're going to lose 10 points for each day that you turn it in late, up through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Up through Thursday, and then at that point you turn it in after Thursday, you get 0 points for the assignment. So please be on top of when that needs to be in. You don't want to basically lose a letter grade a day just because you haven't finished it up. Finish it up, turn it in, get all the points. So, before we move on to talking about what's going to happen in this upcoming week, I want to talk a little bit about what we talked about last week. And to start with, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm going to get up and shut this door because it is raining into my office. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that, back. Okay, so I want to talk about the difference between anthropology's understanding of race, racism, and racialism. So we have this idea in American culture that there is a strong biological basis for race, that they are clear and distinct groups, and that knowing what race someone is tells us something about them. I want to be sure that everybody understands that anthropology believes that there is no biological basis for thinking of race as clear and distinct biological groups. In fact, research shows that the amount of difference within a group that we think of as a race is actually much larger than the amount of difference between the groups that we think of as a race, and there's no clear line between them. In fact, we think of race as sort of this arbitrary set of rules that we made up and decided to go along with. Part of the basis for this is, depending on what culture you grew up in, you might have really different ideas about what defines a person's race, or even what race they are. In some cultural groups, there are as many as 7 or 13 racial groups, and people are more mobile between them. Like how much money they make might move them between the races, for instance, which is very different from how we think of it in the U.S., which is very strongly kind of black and white, and then we sort of decide who fits into each of those groups depending on what's going on in our other ideas. So, race. Racism, however, very real, very clear, very common in the U.S. So we think of racism as being not only discrimination, because anybody can experience racial discrimination, right? I'm all about my group, I'm not about your group. I would like to be with my people, shop with my people, do stuff with my people. I have strong feelings about race. I think that your group is not okay, okay? Racial discrimination. But racism is the idea that these perceived groups that we're in tell us something about people, and that there is a power differential, a hierarchical system within our society in which we think that this racial group is much better than this racial group, and that this group has power over that group. So without that also power over differential, not racism. The third idea that we've been talking about is racialism, also very present in the U.S., right? This really strong belief that there are distinct racial groups, that they tell us something about people, that we know by looking at you what racial group you are, and that means stuff about how smart you are, and what your economic status might be, and what kind of job might be available to you. So, I'd also really like to have you hear me say that even though anthropology believes that there is no biological basis for race, that doesn't mean that race doesn't impact every aspect of our life, and that the experience of race is not very real to people. The cultural experience of race Okay, so we're not saying that race in the US is not a real thing. We're just saying that we think people's idea that it's based on this biological set of things, not really true. Okay, so, and also that there's a set of privileges and discriminations that comes based on that system that we've all kind of agreed to go along with. All right, so anyway, that was week 2, and we're going to keep all of that in mind and move on to week 3, in which we will be talking about gender roles and rites of passage. I do want to say, as you go to do the work on gender roles, our discussion question asks you to talk about alternative gender roles, and by that we don't mean gender roles that are about masculine and feminine, but are different than yours, right? Like a culture where men, maybe it's okay for them to hold hands in a way that in the US is maybe not perceived as a positive experience, or in which women have more power than they do in the US, right? Rather, we're talking about gender roles that go beyond masculine and feminine. So if a culture has gender roles that are different from yours, but there are still only 2 of them, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about folks that have masculine, feminine, and other. We want you to talk about the other. Let's see, what else is happening this week? Oh, your rough draft is due this week. That's a pretty big deal. Please remember that your rough draft plus your final paper is the biggest chunk of points you're going to get in this class. And so you want to do a pretty serious good job on this, because it's going to impact your grade in a substantial way. So, some tips to help you do well on that paper. The most important one might be, after you've written your rough draft, have a friend or a family member or one of your kids listen to you read the paper out loud. People start writing and they get tangled up in the argument that they're making, and it's easy for what you're saying to go awry and not mean what you mean it to say. And because you've been looking at it so long, you don't even notice, right? So read it out loud to someone. Find those places where you've gone a little astray in what you're trying to say and fix them before you turn them in. The second tip that really helps you get a good grade on your rough draft is to look closely at the rubric. On our assignment at the top, there's a little hyperlink. It says the rubric for this assignment, which is a bunch of different elements that are required for the paper and the points that you get for each. So you're not going to do well on the paper if you don't hit all those elements, because that's what I'm using to grade your paper. So look at the rubric, compare it to the paper you've written, make sure you're hitting all those elements. You want to be sure that you're writing about 2 cultural groups that are